Sailing comprises wind propulsion of a craft by means of sails or other airfoils and steering it over water, ice or land, depending on the type of craft. A sailor manages the force of the wind on the sails by adjusting their angle with respect to the moving sailing craft and sometimes by adjusting the sail area. The force transmitted from the sails is resisted by forces from the hull, keel, and rudder of a sailing craft, by forces from skate runners for an iceboat, and by forces from wheels for a land sailing craft to allow steering a course on a point of sail with respect to the true wind. While there are still some places in the world where sail-powered passenger fishing and trading vessels are used, these craft have become rarer as internal combustion engines have become economically viable in even the poorest and most remote areas. In most countries, sailing is enjoyed as a recreational activity or as a sport. Recreational sailing or yachting can be divided into racing and cruising. Cruising can include extended offshore and ocean crossing trips, coastal sailing within sight of land, and day sailing. History. Throughout history, sailing has been instrumental in the development of civilization, affording humanity greater mobility than travel over land, whether for trade, transport or warfare, and the capacity for fishing. The earliest representation of a ship under sail appears on a painted disc found in Kuwait dating between 5000 and 5500 BCE. Polynesian oceanfarers traveled vast distances of open ocean in outrigger canoes using navigation methods such as stick charts. Advances in sailing technology from the Middle Ages onward enabled Arab, Chinese, Indian and European explorers to make longer voyages into regions with extreme weather and climatic conditions. There were improvements in sails, masts and rigging, improvements in marine navigation including the cross-tree and charts of both the sea and constellations, allowed more certainty in sea travel. For the 15th century onwards, European ships went further north, stayed longer on the Grand Banks and in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and eventually began to explore the Pacific Northwest and the Western Arctic. Sailing has contributed to many great explorations in the world. Physics. Introduction. The air interacting with the sails of a sailing vessel creates various forces, including reaction forces. If the sails are properly oriented with respect to the wind, then the net force on the sails will move the vessel forward. However, boats propelled by sails cannot sail directly into the wind. They must tack back and forth in order to progress directly upwind. Sails as airfoils. Sails are airfoils that work by using an airflow set up by the wind and the motion of the boat. Sails work in two modes: to use the wind to generate force, push, when the boat is going in the same direction as the wind force simply pushes on the sail. The force on the sail is mostly aerodynamic drag, and sails acting in this way are aerodynamically stall, pull. When the boat is traveling across the wind, the air coming in from the side is redirected toward the rear, according to Newton's third law. The air is accelerated towards the rear of the boat and the sails experience a force in the opposite direction. This force manifests itself as pressure differences between the two sides of the sail. There is a region of low pressure on the front side of the sail and a region of high pressure on the back. Another way to say this is that sails generate lift using the air that flows around them in the same way as an aircraft wing. The wind flowing over the surface of the sail creates a force approximately perpendicular to the sail. The component of that force parallel to the boat's keel pulls the boat forward. The component perpendicular to the keel makes the boat heel and causes leeway. Apparent wind. The wind that the boat experiences is the combination of the true wind and the wind that occurs due to the forward motion of the boat. This combination is the apparent wind, which is the relative velocity of the wind relative to the boat. When sailing upwind, the apparent wind is greater than the true wind and the direction of the apparent wind will be forward of the true wind. Some high-performance boats are capable of traveling faster than the true wind speed on some points of sail. See for example the area, which set a world speed record in 2009 by sailing 1.71 times the speed of the wind. Iceboats can typically sail at 5 times the speed of the wind. The energy that drives a sailboat is harnessed by manipulating the relative movement of wind and water speed. If there is no difference in movement, such as on a calm day or when the wind and water current are moving in the same direction at the same speed, there is no energy to be extracted and the sailboat will not be able to do anything but drift. Where there is a difference in motion, then there is energy to be extracted at the interface. The sailboat does this by placing the sail in the air and the hull in the water. A sailing vessel is not maneuverable due to sails alone. The forces caused by the wind on the sails would cause the vessel to rotate and travel sideways instead of moving forward. In the same manner that an aircraft requires stabilizers, such as a tailplane with elevators as well as wings, a boat requires a keel and rudder. The forces on the sails as well as those from below the water line on the keel, centerboard, and other underwater foils including the hull itself combine and partially cancel each other to produce the motive force for the vessel. Thus, the physical portion of the boat that is below water can be regarded as functioning as a second sail. The flow of water over the underwater hull portions creates hydrodynamic forces, which combine with the aerodynamic forces from the sails to allow motion in almost any direction except straight into the wind. When sailing close to the wind, the force generated by the sail acts at 90 degrees to the sail. This force can be considered as split into a small force acting in the direction of travel, as well as a large sideways force that heels the boat. To enable maximum forward speed, the force needs to be cancelled out, perhaps using human ballast, leaving only a smaller forward resultant force. Depending on the efficiency of the rig and hull, the angle of travel relative to the true wind can be as little as 35 degrees or may need to be 80 degrees or greater. This angle is half of the tacking angle and defines one side of a no-go zone into the wind, in which a vessel cannot sail directly. Tacking is essential when sailing upwind. The sails, when correctly adjusted, will generate aerodynamic lift. When sailing downwind, the sails no longer generate aerodynamic lift and airflow is stalled, with the wind push on the sails giving drag only. As the boat is going downwind, the apparent wind is less than the true wind, and this, allied to the fact that the sails are not producing aerodynamic lift, serves to limit the downwind speed. Effects of wind shear. Wind shear affects sailboats in motion by presenting a different wind speed and direction at different heights along the mast. Wind shear occurs because of friction above a water surface slowing the flow of air. Thus, a difference in true wind creates a different apparent wind at different heights. Sailmakers may introduce sail twist in the design of the sail, where the head of the sail is set at a different angle of attack from the foot of the sail in order to change the lift distribution with height. The effect of wind shear can be factored into the selection of twist in the sail design, but this can be difficult to predict since wind shear may vary widely in different weather conditions. Sailors may also adjust the trim of the sail to account for wind gradient, for example, using a boom vang. Points of sail. The point of sail describes a sailing boat's course in relation to the wind direction. No sailboat can sail directly into the wind, and for a given boat there is a minimum angle that it can sail relative to the wind. Attempting to sail closer than that leads to the sails luffing, and a boat will slow down and stop. This no-go zone is about 45 degrees either side of the true wind for a modern sloop. There are 5 main points of sail. In order from the edge of the no-go zone to directly downwind they are close haul, close reach, beam reach, broad reach, running. The sail trim on a boat is relative to the point of sail one is on. On a beam reach, sails are mostly let out. On a run, sails are all the way out, and close-hauled sails are pulled in very tightly. Two main skills of sailing are trimming the sails correctly for the direction and strength of the wind, and maintaining a course relative to the wind that suits the sails once trimmed. Close-hauled or beating, a boat can be worked to windward to arrive at an upwind destination. By sailing close-hauled with the wind coming from one side, then tacking and sailing with the wind coming from the other side. By this method of zigzagging into the wind, known as beating, it is possible to reach any upwind destination. A yacht beating to a mark directly upwind 1 mile away will cover a distance through the water of at least 1.4 miles. If it can tack through an angle of 90 degrees, including leeway. An old adage describes beating as sailing for twice the distance at half the speed and 3 times the discomfort. An estimate of the correct tacking distance can be obtained by using Pythagoras' theorem with equal tacks. This also assumes a tacking angle of 90 degrees. When beating to windward, one tack may be more favorable than the other, more in the desired direction. The best strategy is to stay on the favorable tack as much as possible. If the wind shifts in the sailor's favor, called a lift, so much the better, then this tack is even more favorable. But if it shifts against the sailors, called a header, then the opposite tack may become the more favorable course. So when the destination is directly into the wind, the best strategy is given by the racing adage, tack on a header. Quote, "This is true because a header on one tack is a lift on the other." How closely a boat can sail into the wind depends on the boat's design, sail shape and trim, the sea state, and the wind speed. Typical minimum pointing angles to the true wind are as follows. Actual course over the ground will be worse due to leeway, about 35 degrees for modern racing yachts which have been optimized for upwind performance. About 40 to 45 degrees for modern cruiser racer yachts, about 50 to 60 degrees for cruisers and work boats with inefficient keels, inefficient hull shapes, or low draft. When compared to craft designed for sailing performance, and for boats carrying 2 or more masts, around 80 degrees for square riggers and similar vessels due to the sail shape which is relatively inefficient when sailing upwind. Sailing close-hauled under a large amount of sail and heeling a great deal can induce weather helm, or a tendency for the boat to turn into the wind. This requires pulling the tiller to windward, or turning the wheel leeward, in order to counteract the effect and maintain the required course. The lee side of the hull is more underwater than the weather side, and the resulting shape of the submerged parts of the hull usually creates a force that pushes the boat aweather, driving both the asymmetric heeling hull form and the angled rudder through the water produces drag that slows the boat down. If weather helm builds further, it can limit the ability of the helmsperson to steer the boat, which can be turned towards but not effectively away from the wind. At more extreme angles of heel, the boat will spontaneously round up into the wind during gusts, i.e., it will turn into the wind regardless of any corrective action taken on the helm. Any action that reduces the angle of heel of a boat that is reaching a beating to windward will help reduce excessive weather helm. Racing sailors use the body weight to bring the boat to a more upright position, but are not allowed to use movable ballast during a race. Reducing or reefing the total sail area will have the same effect, and many boats will sail faster with less sail in a stiff breeze due to the reduction in underwater drag. Easing the sheets on aft most sails, such as the mainsail in a sloop or cutter, can have an immediate effect, especially to help with maneuvering. Moving or increasing sail area forward can also help, for example by raising the jib on a cutter. The actual design of the boat may be at fault. In this case, adding of bowsprit, recutting the mainsail, or moving the mast forward may all be part of the solution. Basically, anything that moves the center of effort of the sails more forward will have the effect of reducing where the helm reaching when the boat is traveling approximately perpendicular to the wind. This is called reaching. A beam reaches with the wind at right angles to the boat. A close reach is anywhere between beating and a beam reach, and a broad reach is between a beam reach and running. For most modern sailboats, that is boats with fore and aft sails, reaching is the fastest way to travel. The direction of the wind is ideal when reaching because it can maximize the lift generated on the sails in the forward direction of the boat, giving the best boat speed. Also, when reaching, the boat can be steered exactly in the direction that is most desirable, and the sails can be trimmed for the direction. Reaching may, however, put the boat on a course parallel with the crests of the waves. When the waves are steep, it may be necessary to sail closer to the wind to avoid waves directly on the beam, which create the danger of capsizing. Running, steering a boat within roughly 30 degrees either side of dead downwind is called a run. This can be the most comfortable point of sail, but requires constant attention. When the wind is coming directly behind the boat, a fore and aft rigged vessel may sail wing on wing, one sail on port, the other on starboard. Loss of attention by the helmsperson can lead to an accidental jibe, causing injury to the boat or crew. All on deck must be aware of, and if possible avoid, the potential arc of the boom, main sheet and other gear in case an accidental jibe occurs during a run. A preventer can be rigged to reduce danger and damage from accidental jibes. Traditional sailing vessels with boomless or square sails are not put at risk by jibing. Another technique used while running is sailing by the lee. Here, the mainsail is placed on the windward side of the boat, leading to a heightened risk of jibbing, with the main placed perpendicular to the boat to windward, and then pulled in slightly. The leech is allowed to act as the leading edge of an airfoil. This position, though unstable to accidental jibes, allows the sail to generate some force from lift, just as when sailing on a broad reach. In fact, because there is no mast to generate turbulence around the sail's leading edge, the lift generated is somewhat stronger than might be expected for such an oblique profile. Another technique often used by cruisers is to set two head sails, one to port and one to starboard. Depending on the sails, this can often give as much sail area as a spinnaker, but is easier to control. It is also easier to handle than going wing and wing, as the mainsail is not set and does not disturb the airflow to the head sails. The main boom then can be rigged as a whisker pole too, to stabilize one of the head sails. Running is generally the most unstable point of sail for a fore and aft rigged vessel, but the easiest for a novice to grasp conceptually, making it a common downfall for beginners. In stronger winds, rolling increases as there is less rolling resistance provided by the sails, as they are eased out. Also, having the sails and boom perpendicular to the boat throws weight and some wind force to that side, making the boat harder to balance. In smaller boats, death rolls can build up and lead to capsize. Also on a run, an inexperienced or inattentive sailor can easily misjudge the real wind strength, since the boat speed subtracts directly from the true wind speed and makes the apparent wind less. In addition, sea conditions can also falsely seem milder than they are, as the waves ahead are being viewed from behind, making whitecaps less apparent. When changing course from this point of sail to a reach or a beat, a sailboat that seemed under control can instantly become over-canvassed and in danger. Any boat over-canvassed on a run can round up, heel excessively, and stop suddenly in the water. This is called broaching, and it can lead to capsize, possible crew injury and loss of crew into the water. Options for maneuvering are also reduced. On other points of sail, it is easy to stop or slow the boat by heading into the wind. There may be no such easy way out when running, especially in close quarters or when a spinnaker with scupola preventer is set.